Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Centre for Wisdom and Compassion, and welcome to this weekend Vipashyana retreat. Just before we start, a couple of the sort of logistics for the weekend. First, the schedule. So this evening we've got 2 hours. We're going to break that into 2 short sessions with a little break in the middle. Then tomorrow we start at 10 o'clock, finishing at 5 o'clock. We're going to have 5 sessions tomorrow, each an hour long with a little break in between. Lunch will be from 12:15 till 1:30. And then on Sunday, we'll start again at 10 o'clock and we finish at 4 o'clock. 4 sessions, each an hour long, again with a little break in between, and lunch break 12:15 to 1:30. So this weekend's retreat is Vipashyana retreat. Of course, this is the wisdom aspect of the practice. And what we are going to be doing to give a little bit of balance to our practice is both tomorrow and Sunday in the session after lunch, we're going to balance the Vipashyana, the wisdom aspect of the practice, with a bit of the other aspect, the compassion side of practice. So we're going to work a little bit on the compassion wing of practice on those sessions after lunch, both tomorrow and Sunday, to give a little bit of balance to our Vipashyana. So that's a little bit the schedule that we've got cut for the weekend. And so what we'll do now, I think, is very good, is to start with a short meditation, just to sort of prepare the body and prepare the mind to set ourselves in a good state for our introduction this evening to the Vipashyana practice. Actually, one or two more words, maybe. Before we go to the meditation, just briefly, how many of you have some experience with Vipassana practice in any sort of form? Okay, so most of you have. Okay, I'm going to be sort of assuming that we don't have much experience with it, so I'm going to sort of go from the foundation and then build up from that. So even if you don't have much experience with the Vipassana practice, I think you're not going to be lost in this weekend retreat. So we're going to sort of build up from the basis. Okay, so what I'd like to do now then is to start with a short meditation, again, just to prepare ourselves well, to prepare the body, prepare the mind, and set a good motivation for this retreat. So if you'd like to find a nice, comfortable posture, then we can start with that little short meditation. So simply allow your awareness to descend into the body and become aware of sensations throughout the body. And if you notice any area of tightness or tension in any part of the body, then use the out breath to relax and release that tightness or tension as best you can. Bringing your awareness to the area of your face, softening and relaxing all the muscles in the face. The mouth and jaw soft and relaxed. And all the muscles around the eyes soft and relaxed. In this way, allowing the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. And then we can take 3 slow, deep breaths, maintaining awareness of sensations throughout the body as you breathe. And then allow the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. Not trying to control or regulate the breath in any way. Simply allowing it to flow naturally and effortlessly. And with each out breath, letting go of any thoughts that may have arisen, happily releasing them. And allow the mind to come to rest in the present moment. Simply focusing on the sensations of the breath throughout the body, wherever you can most easily notice any sensations associated with the breath. And maintaining an ongoing flow of mindfulness of the sensations of the breath throughout the body.
Your destination is on the left.
If you find that you've got caught up in a distraction, then the first thing to do is simply to relax. And then release the distraction and very gently return to focusing on the breath. So relax, release, and return each time you notice that you've become distracted. If you're finding yourself getting dull or spaced out, then use the in-breath as an opportunity to arouse and refresh your focus on the breath. And then just spend a few moments and think about your motivation for coming here this weekend, your motivation for attending this Vipashyana retreat. And also think about how you could use this Vipashyana practice in your daily life to improve your life. And then release all appearances and simply allow the mind to come to rest. Simply resting in awareness itself. Simply being aware of being aware. We can slowly finish the meditation and begin our discussions together. In this evening's sessions, I'd just like to do a little bit of an introduction into the Vipashyana practice and a little bit of background to sort of make sure that we have clear where this Vipassana practice fits into the bigger picture. So we can start by actually looking at the word Vipassana. Vipassana is a Sanskrit word. Probably most of you are more familiar with the Pali word Vipassana. Both of them, of course, have the same meaning. And in Vipassana or Vipassana, the VI part of the word means higher or superior. And Pasana or Pasana means to see. So we're talking about higher seeing or superior seeing. And most often the word Vipassana or Vipassana is translated into English as insight or special insight. So of course here we're talking about gaining insight into the nature of reality. So Vipassana practice is about this. It's about gaining insight into the nature of reality. Why do we need this practice? From a Buddhist perspective, the reason we have suffering is because of a distorted view of reality. That now, from a Buddhist perspective, we don't see reality clearly. We have a distorted view of reality, and that is actually leading to our mental afflictions, such as attachment and aversion and jealousy and anger and so forth. And that is driving our behavior and resulting in our suffering. So this is the Buddhist assertion. So if we want to overcome our mental afflictions and suffering, we need to go to the root. We need to eliminate our distorted view of reality. And that's what the Vipassana practice is all about, is uprooting our distorted view of reality and thereby eliminating mental afflictions and suffering and eventually achieving a state of liberation from suffering. So what I'd like to do is have a look at then what are the things we are going to be looking at in this retreat. And that is, we're going to look at how to train in this Vipassana practice. So we're going to look at a number of elements in the training. First, we're going to look at how we have a distorted view of reality. To look at first, in what ways do we distort reality? In what ways are we not seeing things clearly? And then on that basis, we're going to then look at how this distortion, this distorted view, is actually the source of our mental afflictions and suffering. And then the third thing we're going to do is then have a look at how to establish the correct view of reality. And then, of course, on the basis of establishing a correct view, how to meditate on that, because we want to bring our correct view of reality into experience, and that's through meditation. And then, of course, part of our practice, Vipassana practice, is to see how to integrate our Vipassana practice into our life. So these are the elements we're going to look at in this retreat. And we're going to, this evening, look at the first 2 points. We're going to have a brief look at how we have a distorted view of reality and how that really is the source of our mental afflictions and suffering. Then tomorrow and Sunday, we're going to be looking at how to establish a correct view of reality, and then on that basis, how to engage in a meditation practice, to meditate on that. And then on the end of the last session on Sunday, we're going to look at how we can integrate our Vipashyana practice effectively into our life. So these are the elements that we're going to be going through. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, what we're also going to do is that to keep a balance in Vipashyana practice, we're going to introduce a little bit of the other wing of practice, the compassion wing of practice, in the session after lunch tomorrow and on Sunday. We're going to work a little bit on the compassion wing to keep a balance to our Vipashyana practice. So these are the elements we're going to be going through in this retreat. So we're going to be beginning with the first 2 points this evening. And so for that, we're going to be needing the handouts. So I think every one of you should have handouts nearby somewhere. In particular, we're going to use this suffering and its causes chart. But before we use that, let's briefly look at how we have a distorted view of reality. And there are a number of ways in which we really distort or don't see clearly the things around us. And we're going to be looking at 4 ways in which we have a distorted view of reality. The first is we tend to see things around us as quite stable. And of course, we all, at least intellectually, know nothing is stable because science has proven it. I mean, everything is changing moment by moment at a molecular level. But that's not how we relate to things around us. In fact, we often relate to things as if they're quite stable and unchanging. You know, this cup is more or less the same cup that was here yesterday. It'll be the same cup here tomorrow. This is how we relate to things around us. And of course, that's out of sync with reality. There is no such thing as a stable thing. Everything's constantly changing. So that's one way in which we don't see things clearly. We tend to feel as if things around us are fairly stable. And often another thing we tend to do is that we tend to see our experiences, certainly the pleasant ones, as being in the nature of happiness. And on that basis, of course, we chase after those pleasant experiences, hoping that they're going to satisfy us. But the question is, are our experiences, particularly the pleasant ones, are they in fact in the nature of happiness? And of course, the Buddhist assertion is that they're not. And we're going to look at that in more detail later. The third point is what's called autonomous self. We instinctively feel that there's a me here somewhere, that there's something more here than simply the body and the mind. There's a me here who's trying to run the show. And we have this sense of me, that this me is, there's somehow a me to be found here. And this is the idea of an autonomous self. The question is, of course, is there an autonomous self here? Is there something more than the body and the mind here? Again, the Buddhist assertion says no, but we instinctively feel that there is. And the fourth distortion is we believe that there's an independent me here and an independent objective world out there. But the question is there in fact an independent me here and an independent world there? Again, the Buddhist assertion is no. So these are at least four ways in which we view reality. And from a Buddhist perspective, all of those are false. And because they're false, we're out of sync with reality, and thereby that produces our mental afflictions and suffering. I've just briefly mentioned these here. I'm going to go into these, of course, in a lot of detail tomorrow, but is there anything here that sort of is very confusing? So I like to be very interactive in my discussion. So anytime you not have any understanding, then please let me know, ask questions. So is there anything here that's sort of confusing? Okay, so again, this is just a brief introduction, and we're going to go into each of those four in much more detail tomorrow. So these are four ways from a Buddhist perspective in which we distort reality, that we don't see things clearly. What I'd like to do now then is have a look at how these distortions in distorted views of reality actually lead to our mental afflictions, such as attachment and aversion and jealousy and so forth, and that leads to our suffering. So that's where we're going to use this suffering and its causes chart that hopefully all of you have, this one here. So we're going to have a look at that now. And we are going to look at it in terms of the last one. Because this is the deepest level of distorted view that we have. So I want to describe how this belief leads to mental afflictions and sufferings, and that's what the chart is describing. How, by grasping onto the fact that there's an independent me here and an independent world there, how does that lead to mental afflictions and suffering? So that's what we're going to have a look at now. At the first step of the process is what's called seed of ignorance. And here, ignorance is this distorted view of reality. So here, ignorance specifically is this grasping onto a belief that there's an independent me here and an independent world there. And seed of ignorance is the habit of having that belief or that ignorance. So we all have the habit of believing that there is an independent me here and an independent world there. We've had that since we were born, and from a Buddhist perspective, well before that. So we have this habit of believing this reality, independent me, independent world. And then when we look out on the world, of course the world does in fact appear to exist independent of us. But the Buddhist assertion is that this appearance is deceiving us, that things don't exist in the way they appear to us. The way they appear to us, of course, is if they exist independently. And another way of saying that is what's called dualistic appearance, subject-object duality. So there appears to be subject-object duality. There appears to be a me here and an independent objective world out there. But the Buddhist assertion is that the way in which the world is appearing to us is mistaken. So this appearance that we're receiving is called mistaken dualistic appearance. That everything appears to us in this dualistic way. Everything appears to exist independent of us. And of course, we have the habit of believing that. So we never question these appearances because the world has always appeared to us in this way. So there's no reason for us to question those appearances. We just automatically accept, yep, that's how the world is. And so that's step 2. Ignorance. So we're just automatically accepting there is an independent me here and an independent world there. Now, in every one of our experiences, we have what's called this mental factor of feeling. Now, in Buddhism, this word feeling doesn't mean emotion. Normally, when we hear the word feeling, we think emotion. But here, the word feeling is talking about simply experiencing things as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So let's take an example. Let's say we're looking at these flowers over here, and they appear to us to exist completely independent of us. We have the habit of believing that, so we just automatically accept, yes, those flowers there are existing completely independent of me. They're already there when I walk in the door, and I'm just acknowledging their existence. But let's say when we look at these flowers, we have a pleasant experience, a pleasant feeling. Then that pleasant feeling, together with the belief that those flowers are independent of us, is going to lead to the 3rd step. Because if I believe those flowers exist independent of me, and I'm having a pleasant experience when I see them, of course I'm going to naturally assume those flowers, there must be some attractive quality there that's causing my pleasant experience. So I'm going to see these flowers as inherently attractive. And from a Buddhist perspective, this is a misconception. Or, alternatively, if I look at these flowers and I have an unpleasant experience, together with the belief that these flowers exist independent of me, I'm going to naturally assume there must be some unattractive quality there that's causing my unpleasant experience. So I'm going to see these as inherently unattractive. Or if I'm having a neutral experience, and neutral just means neither pleasant nor unpleasant. If I have a neutral experience when I see these flowers, together with the belief that those flowers are independent of me, I'll naturally assume there must be some neutral qualities there that is causing my neutral experience. So I'll see them as inherently neutral. Everything okay so far? Everyone still there? Does that make sense so far? Okay. So let's say then we got to the third step. If we see things as either inherently attractive, unattractive, or neutral based on our experience, then the fourth step easily follows. For example, let's say again, we're looking at these flowers, we're having a pleasant experience, and we're naturally assuming there must be some attractive quality there that's causing my pleasant experience. We're seeing them as inherently attractive. Now, I like pleasant experiences. I want pleasant experiences. Those flowers seem to be causing my pleasant experience. I want those flowers. So that is attachment, of course. Or let's say I'm having an unpleasant experience when I see these flowers. I don't like unpleasant experiences. I don't want unpleasant experiences. Those flowers seem to be causing my unpleasant experience. Get them out of here. Aversion. Or if I'm having a neutral experience, that will simply reinforce my belief that those flowers are in fact independent of me, which of course is ignorance. But here, often instead of using the word ignorance, you'll see the word confusion. So the word confusion here doesn't mean are these flowers or not. It's confusion about how they exist. It's believing that they exist independent of us. So from our pleasant, unpleasant, neutral experiences, we end up with attachment, aversion, and confusion. Everything still okay? Okay. These mental afflictions then are what's driving our behavior. And if we look at closely, these are the core mental afflictions. And a mental affliction is anything that just agitates our mind. These core mental afflictions actually then also lead to the other mental afflictions like jealousy and craving and anxiety and so forth. So these mental afflictions then are what's driving our behavior. And the Buddhist assertion is that every time we do an action that is motivated by one of these mental afflictions, that has a consequence. And the Buddhist assertion is that our actions lead to our experiences. And those experiences, often the word that is used to describe those experiences is suffering. But we have to be very careful here because the actual word describing our experiences collectively is the Sanskrit word dukkha, which most often is translated as suffering. But that can be quite misleading. So here we're actually talking about this word dukkha, and I'll talk more about what this really means tomorrow morning. So this is how our distorted view of reality leads to our mental afflictions, and then that through our actions leads to our experiences of suffering, or actually the word dukkha. So this is the process of how our distorted view is the source of our mental afflictions and suffering. Any questions about that? Anything there that's not clear? We can ask a question. Let's say we're having a pleasant experience when we're seeing these flowers. Is the beauty there? Is there any beauty to be found in the flowers themselves? Is the beauty there? if the beauty was there, that would mean that anyone who came into this room would have to see the flowers as beautiful because the beauty is there. But I don't think everyone who comes into this room would see these flowers as beautiful. Maybe some people come in and go, ooh, I don't like that at all. Perhaps they have some allergy to flowers, and then they see any sort of flowers and they go, oh, get out of here, get them out. They're not attractive at all. So this assertion is saying that instinctively, of course, we believe the beauty to be there. Maybe if we think about it, intellectually, we might think, okay, yeah, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Okay, yeah, maybe I can sort of understand that. But is that how we're behaving? Is that how we're behaving when we encounter something pleasant? Are we experientially seeing beauty in the eye of the beholder when we see something pleasant? Is that how we behave? Maybe not. Maybe we're behaving as if the beauty is there. Because if we really appreciated that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, why would we ever have craving or attachment for that object? It wouldn't make any sense. But the reality is that even though intellectually we maybe can appreciate this point, experientially that's not how we behave. And our behavior is driven by our instinctive habits. So Vipashyana practice is about changing our instinctive habits. So Vipashyana practice or wisdom practice is not just getting smart. We can be the smartest person in the world. We can have the best, most clear intellectual understanding of nature, of reality in the world, and still be suffering enormously. Because intellectual understanding is not going to change our instinctive habits. For example, as we saw earlier, intellectually, we all accept, I think, the fact that everything's changing moment by moment, don't we? Didn't we learn that at school? Hasn't science proven that conclusively, without a doubt, that everything is changing in every single moment? True? We all believe that. I mean, intellectually, we accept that, don't we? Is that how we relate to things in our daily life? Are we relating to things as if they're changing in every single moment? Or are we relating to things as if more or less they're fairly stable? I think more or less stable. That's how we relate to things. So again, even though we all intellectually appreciate that everything's changing moment by moment, that's not how we're behaving. So again, Vipashyana practice is to change our instinctive habits, is to transform our instinctive habit of seeing things as, for example, stable, to instinctively see things as changing moment by moment, and to instinctively see things as not independent, existing independent of us. And that's where we will then eliminate this ignorance. There'll be no basis for any mental afflictions or suffering. Clear? Maybe? Yes, no? Any questions? I want to go back to this chart again tomorrow. There's a few other bits we haven't talked about, but I'll add those in tomorrow. But anything about that?
Question of perhaps why there's a habit of or need to look for something constant. What is it that drives that?
Need to look
for something that is constant. We're either looking for a constant consciousness or constant space or a constant that thing. What is that we want out of that experience?
Well, because we're looking for lasting, genuine happiness, I think.
Yes.
So if we're looking out there for that, then we need something sort of lasting to give us that, aren't we? Mm-hmm. So therefore, if we see things as sort of stable and lasting, then hopefully maybe that thing can give me some more lasting happiness. No? And also, of course, our sense organs, faculties are also limited. You know, you know, like our visual faculty can't see at the atomic level, they can't see this constant flux. So our sense faculty is also, due to its lack of, or limits, is also contributing to the fact of not seeing them as stable and static, because the visual, you know, it looks as if this is not changing. So that's due to the limits of our sense faculty. So that's also contributing to the whole thing, I think.
Then we can also look into our own minds. So perhaps the mind is going to be that source of stability, or the consciousness which is observing the mind.
Yeah, exactly. So we can, I mean, we look for happiness in all sorts of places, and generally we sort of we're looking out there for the happiness. And once we start to, through this mechanism, start to appreciate that, well, finding some sort of lasting happiness out there is not going to happen, then of course the next thing is, well, if it's not out there, maybe it's in here. So maybe something in my mind can give me that. So again, we go there. So that's often the next progression. So we'll be looking a little bit at that also on this weekend.
Because then there's the talk of Dharma happiness. So if that's the one thing that can keep growing, the one thing that can give me happiness, then I'll
exactly. So
transfer my habit.
That's right. So often that's what is often the case, is that once people start to see that this stuff here is not really going to bring me some lasting happiness, maybe a spiritual life will. So then they start looking for something in the spiritual life to hold on to. That's going to make me happy. You know? Then we become spiritual ego. It doesn't work.
Okay. I was thinking about maybe yes, to train this impermanence, as I mean, to train impermanence in your way of experience things and experience beauty. Maybe when you listen to an orchestra, for example, that's very sustainable in some limit. It is not sustainable after the concert is over. The music is gone. It starts and it ends. It's a time limit. So you engage in it, and then it's gone.
Yeah, that's right. So what we're not saying here is that we're not getting some happiness out of pleasure. We're not saying that. We're just saying that we are not clearly seeing what it is. We're seeing it as more stable than it is. We are seeing that pleasure is in the nature of happiness. We are misunderstanding that experience. So the Buddhist assertion here is that if we correctly appreciate that experience, the music, concert, or whatever, then while it's there, we can enjoy it fully.
To engage in the moment.
Right. Understanding that the nature of that experience, that we'll get some temporary pleasure out of it. Nothing wrong with that. And not hoping that it's going to fulfill us somehow, that it's going to be some sort of lasting happiness from that experience. So that is a sort of side effect of this as well.
So don't buy the CD.
Don't buy our CD. It's not
Don't buy
the
the CD.
concert.
No.
You will only be disappointed.
Just pay lots of money and go to the concert all the time. Okay. Let's take a break there, 15-minute break, and then we'll come back and have a look at some sort of background in terms of the Vipashyana practice in the next session. First 15-minute tea break.